Okay, Stacey, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and how it was that you chose Meridian as the place for you to engage your graduate studies. What was it like to search and find Meridian and why make that decision?
I had come across Meridian at one point several years ago. I had this notion that I wanted to study dance movement therapy. And so there wasn't that available, but I'm also a yoga teacher. And so I was just compelled by all of the diversity of offerings in the realm of psychology. And then I was working with a therapist and mentioning that I was wanting to, go back to school and potentially move in this direction of psychology. She was like, have you checked out Meridian? I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna check it out again. And then I let sort of this sense of what I should do and what society tells me I should, sort of falling into this thing of following the pattern that others have laid out for me. I was like, well, I'm gonna get an MSW, and then once I'm a social worker, I can work in all these different realms. It's a broad application of sort of counseling. And I started an MSW program. It didn't fall flat, but I felt like I was learning how to work inside broken systems as opposed to transforming things. And so my therapist again was like, why aren't you at Meridian? And so I went back to another, I had done not an open house, but kind of like a meet and greet. And I signed up for another one and just let myself go into it much more wide open. And I felt so called to this curriculum that is about cultural and social transformation through my transformation. So I applied. I was accepted. It has been a wild ride so far. Lots of things have happened to me in my time at Meridian, including having a baby, taking some time off, and wrestling with, am I going to finish? Is this where I want to be? And ultimately recognizing how much my personal life is being served through this schooling, reschooling, curriculum of transformational learning. And at this point in my journey, I'm almost finished with my master's. I'm pursuing a doctorate. I am so filled by the work that I'm doing at Meridian. I couldn't be happier.
Amazing. It's wonderful to hear. And these tools are really priceless. They can help us face complexities and challenges that we might not know how to prepare for because they're so new and so deep and so all-encompassing. That one thing I want to follow up on, what I'm hearing, or something that I'm noting from listening to you, is there's the possibility that if as an individual you go through that transformation and you discover the tools needed to confront challenges, that will affect the entire world. Do you believe that as a possibility?
I have a background in yoga, and one of my favorite teachers, one of his pieces of writing, he speaks to the yogi, the practitioner, as Agni, or the transformational fire. And it's, the way that we co-regulate, the way that we are designed as social animals. You can't help but transform a community, a family unit, and why not the world if you are within yourself transforming. And so much of what I've learned at my time at Meridian is really being conscientious about the sort of like self-righteousness that sometimes goes along with learning something new or having a new skill set, and like really tracking that. And so it gets transmuted into something like just a sense of deep self-respect, and also humility adds to the potency of how I impact the people around me with my learning. So everywhere I go, the way that I see the world, the way that I participate in the world, we all know that each of us is having an impact, but the more conscious we are of how we're participating, I think that really matters. Within every class, these themes are threaded through so beautifully, and I feel like I'm finally getting it. I'm like, oh, I see. It's all coming together, and it feels really enlivening. Can you imagine if more human beings were moving into the world and building families with the sense of like aliveness and excitement and gratitude and connection? That's a big ripple effect.
I really want to believe in that ripple effect, and I do believe in it. It makes the process sacred in some sense of developing yourself, and through your own development and transformation, you give back to the world some element of what you have received in the process. And I guess in a similar way, we also give back wounds that we have. And if we're traumatized, like if we're hurting, that's also something we are giving back, if we want to or not. And so if we're healing, that is a very beautiful dimension of ourselves that we can share with the world.
Yeah.
You mentioned a very powerful term that I need to follow up on. That's like transmutation. To transmute. I wonder if you can share how Meridian has shown up for you in support of your own transmutation.
About a year ago, was feeling really unsure of whether or not I would stay in the program in the wake of Roe v. Wade being overturned. And I work in women's sexual and reproductive health, and I felt disturbed by what was happening, and I felt like I can't, funnel all of my energy into being tied up in school. I need to do something. I need to participate. And I had a conversation with my advisor, as one does at Meridian. She asked me a series of questions to help guide me deeper into my own process. Like, what is behind this emotion? What is behind this decision? What is it that I'm seeking? What part of me is driving or steering? And through that series of questions, I was able to discover so much of my own sense of powerlessness. To have someone take care to ask me questions and really receive my answers. Like, Megan had no agenda in what my answers were, but she wanted to help me make a clear decision. And so at the end of that experience, I think it was like one day later, I went into class again, one of my classes, developing dialogic capability. And I was then again, like, received by the teacher, by my peers, so fully in my process. And I could feel so much of my own healing happening. It's like learning this skill of within myself, being able to give time and attention to these like moments of upheaval and feeling really disorganized and restless, even to really distill down to the essence of that and what is actually sustainable in my hands, was like a critical turning point for me, choosing to continue on in my degree program with more of a sense of purpose again and conviction about how my personal transformation is what's needed. Because I can see, well, I could see in that moment of this very particular process, recognizing what was actually motivating my desire to move and do. And that was not actually sustainable energy. It was a little bit more of this like, let's burn it all down kind of energy, as opposed to how can we together transform and move forward. So I recognize like, wow, I have a lot to learn. And also, my goodness, it feels so good to be in a community of people who are committed to this process within themselves, which is what, my advisor, my professors have all demonstrated to me at every turn. Like, there's a commitment to being in one's own process, and the integrity of that was really meaningful to me. Even moments of frustration early on in my experience where I'm like, why are you asking me just more questions? I need help. And sticking with it long enough to recognize the dignity in that. Like, I don't have the answer for you. I do, I can help you, and I want to help you come to know what's inside of you, because I believe in that. And so also feeling that steadily increasing sense of capacity within myself, and like I'm seen as complete and competent is just like, whoa. It's a huge experience.
Thank you for adding that. I think that is, yeah, I almost cannot say anything to it anymore because you completed it so well. Yeah, I'm learning a lot also as we're speaking. So it's also very, very rich for me, the experience. You mentioned earlier yoga. And so I assume that the body has been a place of wisdom for you all along. And I want to link that to the notion of holistic and integral education. And how do you feel you have experienced support from Meridian University for you to honor the whole person that you are?
There's sort of this simple answer of the holistic aspect of learning, which is like we learn in so many different ways. While some of us have preferences, there's also the capacity for everyone to learn, like through movement, through doing, through listening, through talking to another person, through just seeing something laid out. And in every single class I've taken so far, there are multiple opportunities to take in information through a variety of ways, but also to express yourself. And this ever-present challenge to move through these various levels of yourself, especially the levels where you're less comfortable or feeling less competent, and the space to be messy and be imperfect and ask questions and say, I don't know what I'm doing. And, for graduate level education, it's pretty amazing to be given full permission to figure it out in real time. You don't have to show up perfect. You don't have to show up knowing everything. In fact, that learning edge or growth edge, which is reflected upon all of the time, is almost the point. And being able to track ourselves in the process of learning and growing and expanding in relationship to the body, to our intellect, to each other, it's so unusual, especially for, like I said, this high level of education where you assume like, oh, you're getting your doctorate, it must be like really intensive and very heady. And the amount of opportunities I've had to share a movement practice on video as part of my assignment, or to, be challenged to make an image of my experience, my process, and share it with my peers. I mean, it's humbling, but I want to be particular with how I mean that. It's like tenderizing, and has also reminded me how much possibility there is for learning through play and like not taking myself so seriously. And certainly dropping the subjectivity of perfectionism, like moving beyond perfectionism, has been a huge part of my growth edge here at Meridian. And I've felt really held and encouraged in what happens when we're able to be imperfect with love. It's been incredible.
I get the sense that the education that you have experienced in your own process had so many more layers to it than mainstream academia seems to indicate.
Mm-hmm.
A PhD should look like, or a doctorate, or a degree in on any level, really. That there's a lot of focus on retaining information, and not really taking care of that the information that is retained has to be somewhere absorbed in the body, and or in the heart, or in some subtle form of our being, that it's not just a regurgitation of information, but that we can answer the call of the life of the future from a groundedness in our new sense of self that is somehow strengthened through the process of education. That shouldn't be a high level of education, that should be the standard model of education in my mind. So I really get that feeling of listening to you.
I have friends who are lawyers, who are doctors, who have, are academics. The amount of information that they have is really incredible. And to use a term from Meridian, the relational capability, the capacity to be with complexity is actually a lot lower than I would expect, because there was not that invitation for vulnerability or imperfection, or meeting yourself in questions and uncertainty and holding that as a sacred part of the process. It's so much about achievement, external achievement and validation and performance. And there's something about the openness of the, written work and assignments, sort of like the kind of almost open forum that it is, that has actually brought about more motivation to do a higher level of work. but it's coming from my sense of like dignity and confidence in what is coming through me. Not like I need to make sure all of these citations are perfect because otherwise I'm going to get a bad grade. And then, it's like these real tense, tight restrictions aren't there. And there's also accountability throughout the whole process, but it has been liberating for all parts of me to not only know, but be encouraged to bring all parts of me forward, which includes the part of me that like, I don't know how to do that. And I'm going to have to learn.
If we just had the permission to state that more often in our lives that we don't know how to do something, rather than this overly confident assuredness of ourselves as some kind of mythic superhero that never falters and never cracks and never bends to anything. It's amazing to hear. There's a lot of humility, development of a humble strength, to put it this way, that I'm just recognizing and listening to you. That brings me to my last point and last question. If you want to share some words of wisdom or inspiration with anyone that might be contemplating to start studying at Meridian, what would you tell them?
I would encourage anyone who's considering applying to Meridian to really imagine the possibility of being wholly welcome as yourself, and also to be aware that the challenge to transcend some of these like structural social ideals about perfectionism and about things looking a certain way is really difficult. So there is a certain like grit that I think is important, but not in the sense that a lot of us have cultivated that quality. Like it's not just about the grind, but the commitment to staying with your softness. It's a really different experience at this university. And the self-reflection, to be honest, for me has gotten overwhelming at times. And also knowing that I have people to reach out to, and knowing that there is a structure there to hold me, to usher me forward, and to encourage me to stay with it, to stay with myself, has been one of the most transformational things I've experienced as a person. Be ready for something entirely different. I can't say enough good things. This experience has changed my life. I definitely was at a real crossroads. Sticking with it, being like ushered through that experience. I don't know where I'd be without this education. What's special about it is the knowing that it's come from me. Meridian has given me tools, but all of this was in me. Like, I don't feel like I've been converted to something, or like anyone is sitting up above me and like, oh, this holy person up here is, I feel like I've been empowered to be in my full capacity.